All right. I think that we are going to officially begin. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. I hope you can all hear me. There is a loud heater blowing behind me. I am coming to you live from the Gathering Waters Public Charter School in Keene, New Hampshire today, where I am engaged in a day-long faculty board retreat with Center for Anthroposophy. And it has been such a rich morning.
Yeah.
Well, that was interesting. It's been an incredibly rich day so far, and we're going all the way to the end of the day. So more to be experienced. But for all of you today, we have, as always, a special, engaging class where I assume you all saw my email that we will begin with artistic engagement with Lissa. This is the last time she will be with us during this round, and we are doing charcoal drawing today. And then after a bit of warm up, we will move into spending some time with Carol, who is really no stranger to you after the summer, because if you remember one of those mornings, Carol got up and led us through a 3-part experience of how much wood can a woodchuck chuck, like I have never experienced before. So more on that in a little bit. Let me go ahead and read the opening verse so we can officially begin. May wisdom shine through me. May love glow within me. May strength penetrate me, that in me may arise a helper of humankind, a servant of sacred things, selfless and true. And in the spirit of our work together as mentors, coaches, evaluators and appraisers, and bringing pedagogical light to others, I'll just leave you with this imagination for the session today. The imagination of illuminating the pathway for others. And to do that, we're going to warm up first with Lissa. May I spotlight you and your hands?
Yes, please. Thank you,
Okay.
Karen.
Welcome,
I'm sorry,
welcome.
my art screen is insisting on being vertical, so we'll work with it. Thank you
Okay.
for your flexibility, everybody. It'll turn out all right. Thank you for being here, for making time for our work together and the next 20-something minutes, our work for yourself. So give yourself a moment to arrive in the space that you created. Take a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. That pattern lets your nervous system know that everything is okay. And find a movement that your body wants to do. And go ahead and do it. Give yourself one more breath in through your nose. And let yourself exhale more air than you thought you had. There's more air in there. We tend to hold on to it. All right, and we'll turn our attention to our artistic endeavor this morning. This is a moment for yourself now in this moment, and hopefully maybe the possibility of something that you can take with you into your mentoring, into your work with your colleagues, into your classroom, into whatever spaces your life creates. Today, we're working with charcoal drawing. So I have several pieces of paper and charcoal. I'm just working with this thin willow charcoal, and whatever you have will work well. If you don't have multiple pieces of paper, you can just move around on the one piece of paper that you have. Charcoal is a very forgiving medium. And this morning, we're going to use our time to draw the same thing several different times. So I selected an object from my classroom that feels pretty simple to me. I invite you to look around your space. I intentionally didn't prepare you for this moment so that you could be spontaneous and not overthink. I invite you to look around your space and choose an object that feels simple to you that you would like to draw. If you pick something really intricate, you might get lost in the weeds of this activity. So something simple, and if nothing is calling to you, you're welcome to share my pumpkin. It's here for our collective use. And your drawing of your pumpkin will look different than mine because you're looking at it from this bird's eye view, and I'm looking to my left and have a different angle. So bring your object into your field of work, and we're going to give ourselves 10 minutes to draw this object. Charcoal is a very forgiving medium. Even without an eraser, I didn't ask you to bring one of those gray kneaded erasers that work on charcoal. I generally don't use those when I work with students because the temptation to undo what we just did can be overwhelming, and it can take over from the generative process of creating art. So we're just working with the charcoal itself and putting darkness down, not necessarily taking darkness away. A little bit of an artistic, strategic, technical spiel is that I invite you to look at your object and remove from your mind the concrete noun that is your object. So I'm going to stop looking at this as a pumpkin, and I'm going to look at it as shapes and values. The shapes being the curved line and the straight line that we bring to the awareness of the first grader, and the values being where there is light shining and where there is shadow cast. So instead of drawing an object, a noun, draw the shapes and the values of your object. We're just going to spend 10 minutes in this endeavor, and our aim is to have a final product after 10 minutes that feels complete, that we can be content saying, I'm done. So I will just be quiet and re-enter again in about 10 minutes. One more minute. And find a moment to bring your work to a close. Thank you. We're going to continue with this exercise by switching to a fresh piece of paper. So either a completely new piece of paper or a different area on the same paper. And we're going to capture the same object with the same strategy of letting our mind forget the noun of the object and just look at the shapes and the values. This time we're going to work toward the same goal of a complete image in 5 minutes. So let's begin with our 5 minutes. Same object, same ending, less time. One more minute. And find a way to reach completion. Before I give the next prompt, I want you to take a moment to notice, how did it feel in your body to take up the same endeavor knowing that you had half the amount of time? What happened to the movement of your charcoal on the paper? How did your breathing engage? Was it exciting? Was it stressful? Did you want to give up? And let's move to a fresh sheet of paper or a new space on the page. We're going to draw the shapes and values of our object in just 2 minutes. And you can bring that question into your work. How does it feel to undertake the same task, knowing that you have now a fifth the amount of time that you started with? And your aim is still to reach a finishing point that feels complete. Let's experience that together and begin our 2 minutes now. About 30 seconds. And find your finishing. Thank you so much. That ending point gets more and more elusive, doesn't it? I can see all of your eyes are still looking down. I know it's hard to let go when I give you less time. Our final endeavor this morning is going to be one more sheet of paper or one more place on your paper with the same object. And I'm going to look at the analog clock on my wall for this one because we're going to capture the essence of these shapes and values in 30 seconds. So take a moment to breathe in through your nose. Tell your body it's okay. Breathe out through your mouth, and we'll begin our 30 seconds. We're about halfway. And we're done. I'm gonna put my charcoal down. Thank you, everyone. I didn't want to talk over your art, but I want to leave you with an idea about why I chose to pair this activity with the life process of reproduction that you're going to work with today. Reproduction can be something that we tend to think of the forward motion of, that it is a creating, generative process. It is one that has to be sustainable. And I chose this backward artistic endeavor, sort of working from the whole in the sense of a longer time to the parts in the sense of a shorter time, because it pushes us into a space where we come down to what is essential. And every reproductive process has that essential spark at the beginning, whether we're talking about the existence of the universe or the creation of a living form. And I hope that what we just did sort of brought us back to something that was at the beginning that can lead to oh so much more. So I'll thank you now for your time and turn things back over to Karen and to Carol for the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Lissa. That was really wonderful to experience that with you. And thank you for all of the sessions you've brought to us. You're welcome to stay, but I know you have lots to do, so take really
Thank you
good
so
care.
much.
All right. Well, I am going to bring forward, as I said, someone who you all got to experience before even meeting. And that was this summer at the residency when Carol stepped in and led a morning activity for us at the mentor training residency. So I want to tell you a little bit about Carol. And if I really told you everything, we would be here for a very long time. But I want to say that Carol has been with Waldorf Education for her entire life. She was a student at the Rudolf Steiner School in New York City, K through 12. Her mother was a Waldorf teacher. One of her children even worked at the Waldorf school after also attending. And Carol has gone on to lead so many classes and students at the Rudolf Steiner School over the past several decades of her incredible career. But she hasn't just stayed focused on one school. She has expanded her picture, her thoughts, her horizon outward, and served as a leadership council member for OSNA for a decade. She led me and my colleagues in the region. She has served as an instructor at Center for Anthroposophy. She currently is a college co-chair and humanities teacher in the high school and leads the mentor training and pedagogical development work at her school, to name a few. And she enjoys spending time with her 4 wonderful grandchildren who all live nearby. That's Carol in a nutshell. Carol, you are welcome to share more about who you are. I think everyone is going to just see, experience, and feel your gifts as you begin to unfold the next hour and a half for us. So welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me? Yes? Yeah. Good. You know, there's a little icon on the bottom of my screen that says leave. That's sort of how I feel. It's like, oh, maybe it's time to just leave. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Very nice.
Please don't
And
leave.
it's great to see faces that I do remember from the summer. One of you having flown all the way in from India, I believe, and joining the group and from all over the place. So yeah, it's very nice to recognize many of the names and the faces on the screen. And I just have to give you kudos for that incredible last day presentation when your group put together lyrics to the Beatles tune "Help." I mean, that was the absolute best thing of the week, as far as I was concerned. In many ways, it was just brilliant and so warm and reflective of all of you and your work with Eric and Martina, and those incredible pastel drawings you did with them. So I do feel like I know a little bit about your group, and you know, this is one of your last meetings. So I wanted to begin with a few verses or poems, and just to maybe bring the mood of fall and October into our space, and to breathe a little bit before we go into specifics. And the drawing was, of course, wonderful. I actually saw all 7 life processes in that exercise with our charcoal drawing. But there's a lovely poem by Christina Rossetti, and I think Karen might be able to share that on the screen. And I wish we could all speak together, but I know that on Zoom it's gobbledygook when you try to do speech work together. But maybe I'll just read it and invite you to think about how the life forces in something are always there, even when it seems as if autumn and winter is bringing something to an end. And so I start with that. It's a little poem called October Garden by Christina Rossetti. Great, thank you. In my autumn garden, I was fain to mourn among my scattered roses. Alas, for that last rosebud which uncloses to autumn's languid sun and rain, when all the world is on the wane, which has not felt the sweet constraint of June, nor heard the nightingale in tune. Broad asters by my garden walk, you are but coarse compared with roses. More choice, more dear, that rosebud which uncloses, faint scented, pinched upon its stalk, that least and last which cold winds balk. A rose it is, though least and last of all, a rose to me, though at the fall. So maybe something to just remember, that there is that extraordinary beauty and power, even in that which seems to either be asleep or even on the wane. And this essence and the essential that Lissa was also talking about, it is there in our students and in our colleagues, even if we can't always see it, if it seems to go to sleep. And the other thing that I thought would be just worth mentioning is the 29th week of Calendar of the Soul, because this fan and spark of thinking into flame is really what production and reproduction is all about. That's exactly really what we're talking about, to enable possibility, to enable something completely new. So I'll just read it very quickly. This is the 29th week of Calendar of the Soul, which I think many of you, if not most of you, are very familiar with that little book. or other texts in which Steiner wrote verses for each week of the year. And this is verse 29. To fan the spark of thinking into flame by my own strong endeavor, to read life's inner meaning out of the cosmic spirit's fount of strength. This is my summer heritage, my autumn solace, and my winter hope. So to fan the life of thinking by my own strong endeavor. That's really, I think, what we're trying to share with our mentees when we are working with them in the course of a year or 2 or 3 or 4. And, you know, the work of mentoring, just as a general comment, I think it has to be a sacred space that you create with your colleagues when you embark on this. You have to insist in your schools that you're meeting with your colleagues. If you are a mentor, all of you on the screen are mentors, and you've all been in your schools or in Waldorf education for a while, and that's why you're in this program. But you have to really demand, I would say, that this meeting time is sacred and that there has to be time in your schedule to allow for it. Because what you're taking on when you are working with a new colleague or with colleagues that are searching for mentorship and may even ask to meet with you, is exactly as time-consuming and as meditative and as important as what you're doing with the students in a way. And I think too often faculties dismiss this or feel that, well, that's something you'll have to do on the side, but we really have to make time for this because we are involved in aspects of adult education that are huge. We're looking at wide-ranging and deeply conscious activities on your part that you are bringing to these new colleagues. So make this a real priority in your school and in your school schedule. I'm just going to start with that because I saw myself how in developing a mentoring program at the Rudolf Steiner School in New York City, you know, what that took in order to create that consciousness, and also even among board members. Talking about mentoring work at a board meeting is actually extremely important, very enlivening, and can also lead to new priorities in your budget and in your finances. And so I urge you really to bring this to consciousness in your school. So, you know, if you look at the OSNA principles, which all of you are familiar with, and it was very exciting actually to work with Karen on these back in the day when Karen and I were in the Mid-Atlantic region. These were developed. We're talking now about 15 years ago, 12 years ago, and it was very exciting. It might seem like, oh, these have always been here, but they haven't. And the 8th one was just added a year and a half ago. And so, you know, if you look at those, that's already a template for your beginning work with a mentee to really go over what does it mean to have the image of a human being as a spiritual being informing every aspect of the school. That's number 1. Or what does it mean that Waldorf schools foster social renewal by cultivating human capacities in service to the individual and society? Or what does it mean anthroposophical understanding of child development guides the education program? Or what does it mean Waldorf schools support freedom in teaching within the context of the school's shared agreements? Number 5, the conscious development of human relationships fosters individual and community health. Number 6, very important, of course, for our work in mentoring, spiritual development and support of professional growth is an ongoing activity for the faculty, staff, and board. 7, this collaborative leadership model, which at times is quite at risk in our schools. We're very, very anxious sometimes, or our boards are very anxious to find a director and have a more hierarchical model, because collaborative leadership is one of the most idealistic and therefore the most difficult things to attain. And Waldorf schools are constantly finding that challenge. Where is the balance? But the collaborative leadership and responsibility is a core principle of our Waldorf education. We are, quote unquote, self-administered. And this is done by cultivating a shared anthroposophical understanding of social interaction. And although, of course, we need our boards and we need our administrators and our executive directors and our pedagogical leadership, all of that, nonetheless, this idea of collaborative leadership is huge and something we need to talk about with our new colleagues or mentees. And finally, number 8, that Waldorf schools honor and embrace human diversity and dignity, and that we celebrate the diversity of humankind, and that we are engaged in understanding how this affects our curriculum, how we look at the current and historical roots of inequity or diversity, and that we try to address that in a living way, not just lip service in our schools. Now, I bring those, and you all know them, but I bring that simply because I think if you were to work through each of those 8 core principles with a mentee in the course of 2 years, you would have actually an entire template of a syllabus, to use. They are so deep and they cover so much of what we're trying to do with our communities. And I want to stress again that as mentors, we can't be apologetic or ashamed or timid about advancing the idea that we try to work out of an anthroposophical understanding of the human being and therefore education. And I have to say, as mentors, we have to try in ourselves to really come to this idea that the spiritual world exists both explicitly and implicitly. And so that's our work to do. How are we working with that? Because if we want to be researchers and help others be researchers in the field of education, we of course have to be open to many different methodologies and learn about different systems and be interested in that. But we also have to be able to talk about anthroposophy in a way that forms a bond and a relationship with our mentees, let alone our parents and other community members. And I think it's really important that we do that by taking a heuristic approach. And, heuristic from the Greek to discover. And when we're working with new colleagues, that we ask a lot of questions. We take this heuristic approach of discovering something together with our mentees. Like we say, how does this work for you? Try this. What does it do? Does it work? And we're constantly sharing this kind of exchange with our mentees, not just lecturing, right? As unfortunately I feel, of course, I'm doing right now. But it's important to discover together. So, questions together in a meeting. So what about this idea of a spiritual reality? How is that working for you? How do these ideas affect your work? A real discovering together with your mentee. How does Steiner's thoughts about spiritual realities affect your work? What do you make out of karma and reincarnation and these stages of development? Or if we're maybe suggesting that there is something positive and productive about this looking back on the day and thinking about the children, well, ask, has something changed in your relationship with the student when you envision them in the evening? And you can share your own struggles with that and your own thoughts. What does that Rückschau, as Steiner uses that word, what does that looking back do for you, if anything? And what about all this art that's in our school? What do you see in all this artistic work, in this aesthetic education that we bring? Does it lend itself to ideas about how the child is exploring a kind of free and unique soul and spirit in the world? What do you see there? What have you observed? So most importantly, too, I think this realm of feeling that we're all familiar with when we're teaching in the elementary school years, and we know how we approach subjects with an idea to connect to the feeling life of the child. But what about with your mentees? There is a real substance that's created between you and your mentee. It's an active substance that is cultivated through your feeling relationship with this other human being. You have to work at that. It's something that takes time and trust, and it's active. And one of the things I took away from the teacher training conference in the Goetheanum a year and a half ago was how time and time again, young people there talked about relationship, that everything in their training and mentoring rose and fell on whether a real relationship was formed between their mentor or the instructor, teacher in the Teacher Training Institute and them. And so I think it's also very important to just remember that education, the word education, comes from the composite of prefixes and stems which mean to lead out of love. So you have E or X to lead out of, you have ductus, which means to lead, and then you have caritas, which is love or charity. So when we're talking about education, it's always leading out of love. I think that's very important to share with our new colleagues or with people we're mentoring, people we're speaking to on this level. And this bringing your mentee to a threshold of attention, that's an activity that takes lots and lots of time and work. How do you bring your mentee to this threshold of attention and help them to stay there, to be aware of your own attention? Because that kind of seeing cognition is what we're all trying to develop in ourselves as administrators and teachers. How do you stay with the phenomena and give it the kind of attention that's needed? So with that as a kind of preface to what it really means to work with our mentees, we look at this wonderful schema that Karen has developed and others for us, that we look at mentoring also as embodying these 7 life forces, these wonderful forces that are all interrelated and work together. And breathing, warming, nourishing, secreting, maintaining, growing, and producing and reproducing are all interrelated, as you know, and they are coming because of liberated etheric forces or formative forces, if you will, that are being liberated after those first 6 or 7 years of the child. And I think the other thing to really think about is, how do you talk about formative forces and etheric forces with your mentee? Because these 7 life processes are the same formative forces that are liberated in order for children to develop imagination, thought, and memory. And so how are we working with those etheric forces in the first 7 years, and then in the next 7 years, and then again in the high school? So these etheric forces are so important because they are transformed into mental and soul capacities. And if you can bring your mentee to that understanding that these 7 life forces are really forces which are liberated etheric forces in the human being, that's, a year of study altogether. Because those 7 life forces are also permeating all of our senses. And here we could just take a quick look at that graph that Steiner gives us in the Riddles of Humanity, in that text. And I don't know if Karen, if you can pull that up, the interrelation between the 12 senses and the life forces. And again, I'm sure many of you are familiar with that. So that we see those 7 life forces, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there in Roman numerals, and how they flow through each one of our 12 senses. And those 12 senses, as we know, become the foundation for the I, for the self of sense, for the ability to make free and new thoughts. So this idea of working with breathing, warming, nourishing, secreting, maintaining, growing, etc., producing and reproducing, you've gone through all of those. And now we were at the very last one. And as I'm sure you've already discussed in your other Zoom meetings, there is a wonderful capacity in these 7 life forces, which are liberated etheric forces. The first 3 are bringing the outside into us, breathing, warming, and nourishing. The middle one, secretion, as we know, is in a way the most subtle and the most complex, where the human spirit and soul and body are really all connected, and there is this sorting, questioning, discerning activity. And then in maintaining, growing, and producing, reproducing, we have the ability to integrate new things into the world. And these are the most personal and the most individual of the 7 life processes, which nonetheless are flowing into each other and always interrelated. So we get this idea now at the very end. It's really interesting that this last one that Steiner talks about is producing, reproducing. And as we know, the body is constantly producing, it's constantly producing new cells and new, very new parts of the human physical system are being renewed all the time. And we know that there's a very strong relationship between the physical and our own emotional soul life. But I think the most important thing to do is to understand how human production and reproduction is the only place where we can see that a completely new idea or substance has been put in the world that has never been put there before. And when you reach the end of these 7 life forces and you're looking at production and reproduction, this is where we want to bring our mentee, where we're hoping that through trust and camaraderie and connection to the feeling life and a heuristic approach to anthroposophy, how does this feel for you? What do you see when this and this happens? What do you think about this? All of that. If we can enable the possibility for our colleague to really fan the spark of thinking, to fan the spark of thinking into flame, as the verse says, by their own strong endeavor, then I feel we've done our job as mentors. Because we see that in the soul realm, the task of reproduction is in the realm of ideas. Whenever the thought life of a human soul has turned to creating something new, when that has happened, we have on the highest level, not just the physical reproduction, which is only possible after adolescence, when our hormones and our physical body actually create the possibility for reproduction, but also in our soul and in our spirit, which we know is going to continue on after this life ends. There is this understanding that something brand new has come out of the self of that colleague, that we've brought that colleague to a threshold of attention and observation that really allows, after these 6 stages that we've gone through with them, to breathe with them, to nourish, to warm, all of that. Now, at the very, very end, what is the end objective of your work with your mentee? That they can develop a new thought out of their own souls and out of their own spirit. Not an abstract concept which you've given them, which resonates, but truly something new that they can reproduce what has been percolating and developing and gestating, if you want to think of, embryology and this idea of reproducing a new human being who has never been here before. This is really the crowning event of the 7 life processes, I would say. And this ability to share what it means to become truly original and to reproduce new ideas, that is the very last, I think, task and also a culminating activity of your work with your mentee, that they can do this. And I would say that we're quite impatient most of the time. We think, oh, I can mentor for a few months or a year. But I've said it before that I almost feel that we should think of mentoring and reaching this last stage of reproduction, which is enabling new possibilities and enabling new thoughts. I would say that we should also think of mentoring as a kind of 7-year cycle, because it takes time to get our colleagues and even ourselves to breathe and bring attention. It takes time to warm the space through our concentrated interest in each other. It takes time to nourish and have that enthusiasm be born. It takes time to secrete and have this discernment which is needed in Waldorf education, so that you are not overloaded by a million different ideas and trends and impulses and fads, but that you have the discernment in this secreting process to say, this is essential, as Lissa was telling us in the drawing, and this is not essential for my colleague or for me or for the children or this school. This questioning activity on the soul level of secreting takes time. It really takes time. And then to maintain, which is bound up in our forces of memory and the integration of what we've learned, to grow and to be able to expand with what we have done and what we're learning and researching. And then finally, to produce and reproduce something totally original and new, which is going to carry into the future. It's a future-oriented life force, very much a future-oriented life force. And it's essential, because we all know colleagues who've asked us, oh, can you give me like that course outline? Can you just give me a template of this? And you always want to say, yes, I could. I've spent 20 years researching this topic. I could give you my whole folder on Russian literature, sure, but that would be undermining your colleague. Better to spend a year discussing Russian literature together. What do you think? What do you see about Pushkin versus Lermontov? They're both romantics, but what are you seeing there in the poetry? Yes, you can give a guidebook, and so many people, particularly people new to Waldorf education, will ask you, how do I do it? Give me the notes. But you would be then cutting off this last process of production and reproduction, that somebody could come to something out of their own inspiration and intuition. And we know that intuition is the highest capacity for Steiner. There is wonder, imagination, there's inspiration, and finally intuition. And if we can cultivate that with our new colleagues or our mentees, then I feel we can take a step back and watch the future growth of the school. We can see that we've created succession. We've created the ability for colleagues to take it up and maybe bring very new ideas and thoughts to the curriculum or to the school community. But it's coming after these 7 processes, and maybe even after 7 years of work in a school or with Waldorf education. So, one of my colleagues, Michael Soule, always likes to say that Waldorf education should be called slow education, like slow food, slow cooking. It takes time, and it takes all those life forces on a soul level. It takes that breathing together, that warming together, that nourishing, which you're also, as experienced teachers, you're bringing that to your faculty meetings, not just to your mentee, but you really should be trying to encourage this and bring this to the whole faculty through your weekly meetings and gatherings. And this interest that you take with each other and the attention that you are all willing to give together to either a child study or a text. Always difficult to do that with a group. Whatever it is, you're bringing people along with you to a threshold. And that is a truly spiritual task, because you yourselves, all of us ourselves, are constantly working on that point, that threshold of perception and attention, and trying to stay there and not lose it in this busy world and all the practical details that go on in the life of a school. But I want to keep these 7 life forces very precious and very sacred. And we're really always working towards that last one. How will we see reproduction going forward in the future? How will we ensure that something new and vital and the possible is entertained in our school community and among our colleagues? So I think I'm going to stop there for a moment and take a look at these 7, which you have been working through since last year, and which are so intentional, in the first 7 years. And I see my colleague Karen Imhoff on the screen, who is one of our most brilliant early childhood teachers. She should be leading all kinds of workshops at this point, and she's a mentor in our school. And that first 7 years where the early childhood teachers are working with the etheric to liberate it, so that through the rhythm and the rituals and the reverence of the early childhood program, those etheric forces can be truly liberated for memory, imagination, and thought in the grade school children. If we think a little bit about that, how are we working with these 7 in our own mentoring and teaching work? And I suggested to Karen that we have breakout groups where now you can review what you have been doing since last year and what I know you were discussing with Eric and Martina in the summer, and really try to examine, how are you working with breathing? How are you working with the others as you are mentoring or perhaps doing pedagogical work in your school? So we're trying to break you now into discussion groups, and then we will have a sharing after that is over, where you, I hope, will share the fruits of your discussion. And Karen is going to put you into different groups to look at all 7 of these life forces.
So there will be 7 groups of 3, taking Carol and myself out of the equation. So I'm going to open all the rooms for about a 20-minute discussion, Carol?
Yeah. I think that's good.
Okay.
And is it identified which life force the groups are working on? Because
So would
yeah.
I can make it as easy as group, room number 1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So pay attention to the room that you've been invited to go into and imagine which life force process you are being asked to pay attention to.
Yeah, and maybe before you do that, just to say, how do you feel you've been working with these life forces in any kind of a productive way with your mentees or with your school, with your faculty? And of course, you're working with them all the time with the children, but how do you feel this has actually helped you as a mentor? Why has this schema actually provided some very interesting ideas to work with as a mentor, as an experienced teacher in your school?
Very good. So if you have any questions, I'll stay in the main room. But I'm going to open these up and off you go. And I want to say one thing. Somebody has, it's iPhone 45 and your camera's not on. I don't know who you, oh, okay. Hi, can you just put your name in so that when I get the Zoom, okay, I see that it's you, but I'll remember, never mind. If you can't do it because you're on a phone, that's fine. I'll remember. Thank you, Ala.
Could I
Did someone
ask you
just say they have
now?
a question? Hi.
Yes, I do. Hi, the Bandana here. Yeah. So this is regarding the presentation, the project presentation. Should I ask now or would it be later?
I think we'll try to do that at the end. I'm going to let
Okay.
Carol wrap up, but I know that there are others with questions, so I'm really glad you brought it up.
Okay.
All right, Carol,
Yeah,
bring us
so
back.
we would love to hear from representatives of each of the groups. What did you talk about, and what came out from your sharings with each other and your experiences? And maybe we'll just go in order.
All right, so group 1. And don't worry, this is not like you don't have to have a formed presentation. It's just sharing.
This is, there were 3 of us, Sarah, and I think it was Isabel and me. And we talked about artistic word to create the breathing between mentor and mentee, a walk in nature, practicing breathing, bringing our embroidered handwork that we did and a candle. And then we realized, oh, those are the same things we do for ourselves in self-development. And then we realized, oh, those are the things we do as a faculty to try and bring the breathing into the faculty meetings. And so we noticed those breaths, but also it's hard to sometimes get that in when the mentee in a weekly meeting is just so full of questions. So that's what we talked about. Did I miss anything, Sarah and Isabel?
No, I don't think so. I think this really realizing this, how we know how important it is, but it tends to be the first thing that falls away because we want to go back to business and do whatever it needs to get done. But
Yeah.
it's knowing how important it is.
That's it.
Yeah, should we go to 2 then, warming?
I don't think we decided who's going to speak on our behalf. So maybe I'll just start and then Jenna or Cheryl, you guys can chime in. Yeah, so warming was ours. We were second group, and I guess we started talking about how that process, how you really need to warm up to one another and take time to get to know each other through possibly biography work or common experiences or common likes, to really be able to then move forward in that process of mentoring. If that warming is not established, then it's just so hard to get anywhere else from here. We also talked about how tricky it is in this process of warming to separate that supervision coaching versus really mentoring, this soft skill versus hard skill. And as this warming relating process talks about the feelings of approval, disapproval, this cooling of emotions, sometimes it's hard to wear that hat of a mentor who needs to point things out or supervise a coach individual who, these are in a way different roles within that process. Yeah, I don't know, Jenna, or if you guys want to add.
I think that was great. That really does wrap it up. We were talking about how in some situations like mine especially, it is very complicated because I'm more of an administrator versus a mentor right now, and I'm going to be helping to create our mentoring program. But at the same time, we're in the middle of our school year and we're running with it, and so it feels very muddy at the moment, at least for my particular situation.
And everything that they said, plus just this, what Carol kept saying too about this process, that it really does take time. And yet there's an expectation that we'll just get right into it because the school year is already, a quarter of the way through. So that balance between what coaching is, what mentoring is, if you're admin or if you're on the faculty or if you have a slightly different situation, that it has to be so individualized in each school setting or situation, depending on who is there in your community. I think that was really the overarching thing, is that we have to do the work to figure out who's in front of us and what can we do, and that the language does matter in terms of what we're thinking about for our situations.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right, group 3, nourishing.
Well, if nobody wants to share, I'll be
Lonnie
happy
or
to.
Christina
Lonnie, are
or
you
Karen?
here?
Yeah.
Christina has no voice, I believe, so I'll let her chime in so she doesn't strain her voice so much. So we spoke a lot about, well, what is nourishing and what does it mean? What is the essence of nourishing? And then we spoke about what does it mean to nourish relationships with mentees, but also we spoke about a lot about nourishing relationships with parents, and what does that look like? And Loni shared about her experience in involving the parents in other activities than just just lecturing, but to involve them in artistic activities, let them be part of the experiences that the children have, so that they can have their own understanding of what this means, or they can have this experience by themselves, and then form a community around that. And what else did we speak about? And about this aspect of not being judgmental around parents or around a mentee. How can we form this relationship so that this is a true and honest relationship and really nourishing, rather than a relationship where you feel it is dominated in one way or the other by judgment or by an opinion, by any of this. Lonnie, is there anything you would like to add?
I was taking notes while we were going through it, so I just want to make sure that we hit them all. But we talked about, you had talked about the elementary or the preschool time where, how the food is nourishing the body and the storytelling is nourishing the soul, as well as the rich language and the poetry and the puppetry, the drawing, the painting, the crafts. Of course, the body, we're getting that movement, nourishment, and how nature is nourishing to all aspects. And we also talked about how rest and finding stillness is part of that nourishing also. And then Carol said that we all walk on two legs, and that one leg, Steiner had said that one leg is for enthusiasm and one leg is for uncertainty, and that openness to what is new or problematic. And then she cut off on the last one, and I didn't get to hear that last one. So maybe Carol can jump in and tell us what the last one was.
That's it. I think I was at the end. It's just that it was in connection to the first Steiner's, it was the first teacher meditation.
Yes.
Where Steiner was saying afterwards, and you say this and you speak it together or you speak it alone as a meditation, but remember that the verse is about standing on these two legs of both enthusiasm to meet the children, the parents, your colleagues, but also uncertainty. And actually those two legs create the balance in your teaching. Enthusiasm, uncertainty, openness to the future and possibility.
Thank you, Carol.
Great, thank you all. Group 4. Circulating.
Melissa, would you like to go? Okay. So, to be very honest, it was a very sudden kind of a question, and we were wondering for a few moments, we were very quiet, wondering how do we take this forward? And we referred to our notes. And it's just so happened that I got the notes of Sven in front of me, where he compares the 3 processes. One is life processes, the second one learning processes, and the third one was the mentoring. And then we saw that circulation aligns with analysis in the learning processes and authenticity in the mentoring stage. And it just felt so right to talk about authenticity here. And we visited the idea that, it applies to both the mentor and the mentee. So for a mentee to be able to very authentically acknowledge that this is not the subject that I have a mastery upon, like it could be a math specialist, a student, teacher who's, but now she's doing history, and there's a limitation that she can build together. And at this point of time, we have to accept that. And the best that we can give is what we do. But at the same time, Zeus, who was with us, pointed out that, there is a degree of authenticity that the mentor has to have, that, over a period of time, the mentor begins to realize that, it could have been a better option for this person to be with someone else rather than me, because that would add more value there. And the observation that I was making was that, it's a privilege if you can have that option. It's not always possible to have that many mentors available so that, you can shuffle in this way. The other thing that we were talking about, we went back to the idea of circulation, and then we thought that circulation is about kind of going around and taking, things from not just the subject that we want to work with, let's say again, history, for example, but rather going into the arts, or going into even math or anything for that matter, and bringing it together. So circulating in that way. So yeah, these were the two things, and I think Melissa, let me know if I've missed out anything. Please add on. Okay, and Zeus, if you want to add something, please go ahead. I guess, yeah.
Thank you so much. All right, maintaining. Number 5, group 5.
uh, uh, Lainey and I worked on this, and I let's see. I think what we came up with was it's extremely difficult in different situations. Let me put it that way. It almost feels like, how can we maintain when we haven't built the foundation yet? And say with the mentee, someone brand new, for example, we talked about a couple examples, brand new to Waldorf, who never even heard of the Waldorf until they read the ad, and then they had to look it up. So how do we we can't quite get to maintaining yet, because we don't have a structure to maintain. So we're not Lainey, if you want more to say, go right ahead. It's sort of like we don't, yeah. We've got to get a foundation for our new folks that then we can work to carry forward. And Lainey, if anything to add, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I did probably more than my share of complaining, because I think the part of the maintaining was associated with memory. And I was thinking about the foundation of the school that I work at, how it was started, and the strong memory they have there for how it was started and what they used to do is something that is getting in the way of progress, I think, is what I want to say about that. And so the sort of the resistance of what needs to happen to move the school forward, but the holding on to what it used to look like, this picture of this much smaller, much more, it's a public school, and it's got this really sort of private school impulse behind it, and they're really balking at the growth. So that was the memory piece I was thinking about, the maintaining. It's like we can't maintain something that it's not tenable.
Can I just jump in and say that it makes even more sense then that one would have to begin with breathing and warming and nourishing before you could even think of, as you said so well, maintaining a structure that doesn't even exist. And I think it just points to common feeling in schools that they have to maintain something where the relationship and the substance between individuals isn't even there. So following this order, the chronology of the 7 life forces makes absolute sense, that you would never even assume you could maintain before you can breathe. So how do you work with a school, whether it's transforming from a private school to a public school, or public school to a private school? How do you begin those very, very initial activities that are both physical and spiritual to get to a maintaining place. That might take years, right? Yeah.
My God, so well said. Thank you. The sixth group, growing.
Yes, hello. My colleagues in my group nominated me to speak, and you've created a perfect segue, Carol, to what we were saying. Because in our school, we are in a phase where growth is being pushed forward. And many of us who've been in the school for a long time are feeling that we are not, that this isn't a growth that is coming organically out of our school. The original impulse came before COVID, where we were bursting at the seams and we were financially solid. It said, hey, it's time for us to double track in the grade school. We really need to do this. And then COVID happened and it wasn't really possible. Well, now we're in a position where we are moving forward in that way, but not cohesively throughout the school. So there's a fourth grade that is double tracked with 21 students in each section, but then in the first grade we only have 19 students, and there's just it, and also because we've had financial problems, we've cut back on teachers, so everyone's just stretched really thin to try to make this growth happen. So this was also said in our group that these life processes build upon one another. So if we're not in a situation where we are maintaining and feeling healthy within our organization as an organism, a living organism, we're not in a position to really be growing. So the growth is happening in a way that does not feel integrated within the whole school. We're feeling a little discombobulated with our growth right now. And please add if there are other things that the group was sharing, because we also talked about this sense of the pressure of administration and board who are coming from a more financial standpoint to just have things go quickly rather than moving in the more organic pace, the slow pace that is needed for breathing, for warming, for nourishing, for real healthy growth.
Thank you. I think when we think about growth for our schools, we want to think about those who, really have built up the other life processes, as Carol has mentioned, and then we just reiterated with maintaining. And we really want to think about supporting the growth mindset, supporting research and development, really supporting innovative ideas, pedagogical inspiration. And we can't get there if we don't have a strong foundation. And we can't get there with a mentee who's in their first years of teaching. So going back to Carol's question, I wonder if either someone from the group or Carol yourself could just speak to this particular process in regards to mentoring. It's almost an advanced process for mentoring, but how would we work with this with a mentee? Would it be after years of a relationship of mentoring?
You're talking about growth, the process?
Yeah.
You're talking about growth?
Yes. Or anyone have any thoughts?
Well,
Well, because
if there are
Kelly
thoughts
shared,
from the group that was discussing.
yeah, you're going in and out, Carol. Your internet might be
But I think we've said.
not catching it.
Really? Can you hear me now?
Yes, maybe put your camera off.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but maybe turn your camera off while
Okay.
you're speaking.
Sure.
It sometimes helps.
Yeah.
If internet.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we've said it that we have to demand the time to work on these other processes first in all the different ways we understand them, physically and spiritually. And that we have to make it clear that the the growth of a colleague or even the growth of a school depends on these other forces being alive and healthy and well. Since again, I agree with what others have said, that it's a education of our parents and with board. And I think sometimes there is a unfortunate between the board and the faculty, or the board and the school administration, which doesn't have to be there. In the end, they are board because they want to support the school and they want to help the school grow. But being able to share, well, send 3 teachers to teacher training next year. We don't have $100,000 faculty development. I'd like us to look at the budget and increase it to, 50,000 this year, so that we can give these 3 successful evaluations and really want to become. We should be. You bring things like that to a board who might be pushing for a new building, other things to grow.
Carol,
But you say,
can you turn your video off
look,
while you're speaking?
what do people come back for? They don't come back for the gym. Come back. Yeah.
Yeah, we can't, we're not catching all of your words. You're cutting in and out.
Yes,
So
I
turn your video off if you would,
ah,
and then
okay.
just use your voice for the audio.
So I thought I turned my video off. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. You're frozen then. Okay. And going in and out. All right, well, let's move. We have another minute. So let's go to number 7. Julia, do you want to say something? Unmute.
Sorry, something just came to me as I was in the growth group, so I feel like this is my moment. But something that I hadn't thought of when we were talking, and that is that growth and possibly maintaining imply measurement. And this is where we get into trouble with boards and administrations and parents who want to tick off the boxes, or, are unable to recognize that growth may be happening without measurable results. So I just wanted to add that's sort of a tricky thing. I mean, when you think of growth, we all had, our height measured on the door jamb when we were little, and we grew, like it's measurable. And so anyway, so I think it's a dangerous, like, little trap for particularly boards who may not have a pedagogical leaning to fall into. But anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Thank you for that, bringing the conversation out of the group. Super. And I'll bring us back to growth mindset and helping our mentees and coachees along the way so that they are growing their own development as a teacher and their relationships with the students. So we're talking about growth of the teacher's journey and the growth of their relationship with anthroposophy and Waldorf education, and giving them the opportunity to lean into that growth mindset so that they can come up with innovative ideas. So if we go to the 7th life process now, and we really think about producing and reproducing, which Carol spent all this time talking about before we went into groups, we did have a 7th group, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are. So I see Mariah nodding.
Yeah, I'm the nominated spokesperson for the 7th group. And Julia, thank you for your enthusiastic wave, because it was, as you seem to help me do in our year together here, it was the perfect segue in to what we were talking about, which was sort of the difference between regurgitation and reproduction. My group was Sonia and Dawn. Sonia gave the example of, sort of the difference between special education and curative education, and that special education really relies on quantitative data. And I think some of us have maybe had those experiences if we've had students with IEPs and other things like this, like how quantitative it is and how curative education is much more qualitative, and spending time observing the children, observing your mentee to see what is living, and sort of that unspeakable whatever it is that lives between the student and the teacher, or the mentor and the mentee, the thing that you can't put words to, but that's there and allows something new to be born. We talked about self-reflection and self-education being a big part of reproduction, and the being allowing one to be inspired and to be creative, the trust that the mentor has to have in their mentee to say, you're going to take the questions I've asked you and you're going to go into your classroom and you're going to come up with your own thing about it. And I'm going to trust that that's the right thing for the children, even though it's not what I would do. And so it means we don't have all the answers. Reproduction means we don't necessarily know the outcome. When a baby's born, we can have our plans, but we don't know who they will be, and that we have to allow space for that.
That is wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh my goodness, that was so rich. Carol, thank you for bringing us that activity. And thank you everyone for participating. Carol, we are about out of time, but I would like to know if you have some closing words before I answer a couple of questions about their projects. So go ahead. If we can try to hear you, just unmute and try.
Yeah, I can only, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, can you
Yes, we can hear you.
hear me?
We did for a second, now you're in and out.
Just all the best, all the best to all of you. So just a real cheers to all of you. I'll leave it at that.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. Truly, like applause and love and appreciation. I know all of it.
Thank you.
Okay, so in these last quick 2 minutes,
I'm sorry that it's cut all of you.
No problem. A couple of you have reached out to me with questions about the independent project, and I think it's harder to do an independent project when the parameters are wide and where you're given a lot of freedom. So just kind of going back to a nutshell here of what's happening. Before the next session, I would love it if you could all put together your outline of what is living for you out of this program. It does not have to be a beautiful finished product all in a slideshow, although I hope some of you do have that. You saw Shanoa's when she first came on to do art with us back in the spring. And she said, this is what I did for my final project. And, that's in the resource folder. You've seen what Sven and I do, as far as, slideshows. So in a certain way, like we all have our own independent project, our own angle by which we approach all of this. And today was a perfect example of you could put this together for yourself. Your project could be how you approach mentoring or coaching through the 7 life processes with your school or with your independent consulting business or with your organization that you work with. The sky's the limit. You do not have to just even focus only on mentoring. It can be add in coaching, add in evaluation and appraisal, add in what kind of pedagogical inspirations you're bringing forth. If you remember Andrea from the summer with the early childhood group within our mentoring, she had spent last year doing her independent project on the different topics that you would bring to all of, say, the assistant teachers that are working with you in the early childhood, and all of the aftercare teachers, extended day. So she put together all these different topics. And then we had the level 2 mentoring last year's group, which went into all the different things that you would bring over the course of 8 years if you were a class teacher. So truly the sky's the limit. If your lens is, you know, special education and curative education, do it through that. If your lens is through leading a staff and a community, do it through that. It's truly open to whatever the needs are that are rising for you. It can be one page. It can be a multi-page document. Someone else from the summer, Brooke, just recently submitted her whole independent contracting project and plan. So truly, it's open. Now, the next thing you saw on my email was asking for a solid 6 of you, more would be fine, to present at the final session. We will have a 1-hour presentation on the karmic implications and the destiny of bringing mentoring and coaching out into the world. But then we will have 1 hour of sharing from all of you, just sharing together. So please email me, hopefully in the next week, so I can start having a plan of what this final November session will look like. And also email me if you want to set up an independent Zoom meeting and where we can, drill down a little bit on your questions, your personal questions. I'm happy to be that person that you bounce ideas off of. Is that helpful? Oh, good. Because I need to get back to the faculty board retreat here at Center for Anthroposophy. It's so exciting. It's exciting to do both all in one day. All right, so you know where to find me. Gosh, thank you so much for being here, for taking the time. Good to see you all. Take good care.
See you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.